Well, now, this statue is the first to be added to the Capitol ground in quite some time. Ted, you had a chance to talk about all of the statues here on the grounds.
We took a walking tour of the statues on the Capitol grounds, which are related to previous wars. The tour was conducted by the Capitol's administrator, Sam Townsend, and it begins with the Canova statue of George Washington, which is a duplicate of the original. It's located in the rotunda inside the Capitol.
The first monument in North Carolina's capital was this white Carrara marble statue of George Washington, placed in the old State House in 1821. But the history of monuments in North Carolina began much earlier, in 1777 and 1781, when the Continental Congress urged North Carolina to place monuments for two of her Revolutionary War generals who were heroes and killed in battle. Those statues were never placed because there was no fixed capital in the early days of the history of this state. And it wasn't until 1815, in the patriotic fervor surrounding the War of 1812, that North Carolina decided to order this statue. And upon the recommendation of Thomas Jefferson, Antonio Canova of Italy was chosen to create this piece. It's rather unusual inasmuch as Washington is shown in the clothing of a Roman soldier. He's shown in the role of a citizen soldier, having won the war, laid down the sword and the scepter, and taken up instead the stylus to rule by laws and not by force. As we examine the statuary around the Capitol today, we will see the theme reflected here, the theme of service, the theme of duty to the people, duty to the state, duty to the country. The same theme of service that we see here in this Washington statue will be seen throughout the statues we'll review today.
Sam, this George Washington statue here on the south part of the Capitol has a relationship to the Canova statue inside. Tie that together for us.
Yes, the Canova statue was the first monument that North Carolina, as a state, owned, and it was placed in the old State House in 1821. When it burned down, the statue was destroyed, and this statue was seen as a kind of a replacement for the Canova statue, which could not be repaired and placed in the new Capitol. And there's that connection. In 1796, when placed the original marble of Washington by Jean-Antoine Houdon in their State House, North Carolina was inspired to place its Canova statue in 1821. And so it was natural that when the Canova was destroyed and couldn't be fixed, that North Carolina would think in terms of having a casting made from the Richmond statue. And this casting was made by William J. Hubbard of Richmond and placed here in 1857. And although it was the first statue on the grounds, and it opened up the grounds as a place for people to visit as a park, it wasn't until after the Civil War and after that long Reconstruction period in 1895 that the next monument was placed on Capitol Square, and that was the Confederate monument placed at the head of Hillsborough Street on the west side of the grounds.
Okay, let's move over there. The George Washington bronze statue sits on the south side of the Capitol. It faces the Fayetteville Street Mall. The Confederate Memorial sits on the west side facing Hillsborough Street. This particular monument involves three statues within the one monument. What do they depict?
Well, basically, the three statues depict the three major branches of service in the Confederacy, military service. First, we see the likeness of a cavalry soldier. On the opposite side, the likeness of an artillery soldier. And atop the 75-foot spire, in the place of honor, the infantry soldier, placed there in that place of honor because that was the largest of the three branches of service. It's noteworthy here that on the Confederate seal shown on one side of this monument is a likeness of George Washington. The Confederates considered themselves patriots. They identified with George Washington and the original patriots, and they were indeed patriotic to their Confederate state of North Carolina and to the Confederacy. And in every sense of the word, these men died serving their state and their country as patriots.
The theme of patriotism, of course, is reflected in the statue to the memory of Henry Lawson Wyatt.
Yes, Lawson was the first Confederate soldier killed in battle in the Civil War. And this statue, while it memorializes him, it in effect memorializes all of the Confederate soldiers and the sacrifices that they made. And this is very important in all of the statues that we see today, the theme of patriotism, service, and as we'll see in the next statue, sacrifice.
Sam, the Confederate women's statue is a very striking piece of sculpture here on the south side of the Capitol grounds. How did it come about?
Well, Colonel Ashley Horn, a Confederate veteran, donated this statue to the state in 1914. He felt that the women of the Confederacy had sacrificed more than most people knew, and that they deserved to be recognized for having sent their sons and husbands off to war and having to endure unbelievable hardship at home. And so he presented this statue. The expression on the face of the lady here shows not only the despair, but also the great strength of the Confederate women. And the plaques on the side of the statue are very poignant in depicting, on one of the plaques, prancing horses and smartly marching soldiers headed off to camp. And on the other side, the bowed heads of the horses and the dead bodies of the soldiers coming back from the battleground. A very poignant statue pointing out the glory and the destruction of war. This statue of Ensign Worth Bagley was placed here in 1907. Bagley was the first American officer killed in the Spanish-American War. And as was the custom at the time of placing of the monument, soldiers were very greatly honored for being the first, and particularly the first to show their commitment in battle. And so Bagley was compared favorably with Lawson Wyatt, who was the first Confederate killed in battle. And money was raised by friends and family and by the General Assembly to place this monument here to honor him.
Sam, there are two other war-related monuments on the Capitol grounds, but they're not statues. There's a little difference here.
Yes, there seems to be a trend away from monumental statuary after 1914. And these two World War I monuments are simple stone plinths which honor the 30th Division, Old Hickory Division, and the 81st or Wildcat Division for their service in World War I in Europe.
Sam, how would you relate the existing war monuments on the Capitol grounds to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial?
I believe the theme that reoccurs throughout the statuary we've examined is the theme of patriotism and service and sacrifice. Certainly this will be the theme of the Vietnam Veterans Monument. It's important, in summary, that we remember that the Vietnam Veterans Monument is not intended to glorify the war. It is intended instead to memorialize the sons of America who went off and served us and sacrificed for us in that war.